Okay, there we go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Again, I am Amy McMillan. I'm the chair of the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union, and I call our regularly scheduled meeting for March 28th at 6:30. I call it to order. It is 6:34. And our first order of business is changes or additions to the agenda. I have one addition, and that is that we will be at our last meeting when we reorganized. In absentia, Elizabeth Burrows was voted as vice chair, and she has very respectfully declined. So one of our first orders of business, items for action, that's where we will put that, is we will nominate and vote for a replacement as vice chair of the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union. And the other change, I will, item D, item F in items for discussion. I will I'll discuss how the boards are going to work with a complaint we received for conflict of interest. So that will be item F in items for discussion. And David, did you have anything more?
Amy, will we be discussing mask and vaccine, or not vaccines, but masking tonight?
No, that's not on the agenda. If that would be necessary, we could schedule a special meeting, or there's also when we have public participation and announcements, board members can make a comment to that effect.
Okay. Just interested in light of rising case numbers.
I know. I know.
Yeah, that will come up under my.
I was going to say,
but again, it'll be up to the board whether they want to discuss
superintendent report. Okay.
Right. And the fact that it's not on the agenda and it's such a big topic, I don't feel it would be appropriate to add that to the agenda.
I think the superintendent report will be.
Yeah.
enough.
Thank you, Colleen. Okay. Moving on, we have approval of the minutes. I will take a motion to approve the minutes from February 23rd, 2022 and March 14th, 2022.
Amy, I do have, I want to put in a motion to accept the minutes of February 23, but for March 14th, I had a question about number 7.
Okay, once it's been moved and seconded, then we'll go into that.
Fine, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so Rebecca, you're making the motion?
Yes.
And let me see, I have Nancy.
Second.
And I have Elizabeth.
Yes, I'm seconding.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you. So now it is open.
I can't hear you, Elizabeth.
And yeah, Elizabeth. No, we cannot hear you. No.
It looks like your mic is on. I think she's going to sign out and come back in.
Okay. Rebecca, so item number what?
Item number 7 for the March 14th minutes.
Okay, and what was that specifically?
Last year, we had representation from all of the towns on the budget committee. I think Colleen was on it with Jamie and I. And this year, and I don't know if it even matters, but we only have 2 people, Jamie and I wondered if there should be someone from Heartland on the committee.
Okay, that's a good thing. We can take that up in items for action.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because this is, and that's a good catch, and we'll discuss that. Thank you, Rebecca. We can't hear you, Elizabeth.
Can you hear us, Elizabeth? Yeah, you can hear us. Okay. Yeah. It sounded like we almost had you there.
I think
So
she's trying again.
One more time to come in. Yep.
In the meantime, did anyone else on the board have clarifications or corrections to the minutes from the 23rd or the 14th? Nancy?
This isn't a correction, but I got a message that some people are using companion mode, and that might be keeping Elizabeth from being able to speak. I don't know what companion mode is, but it came up that find out who's using it and stop.
Okay, I haven't seen anything to that effect, so.
Amy, this is Carlin Hood. I think the companion mode is because people are using it at, I believe, at the rec center for like multiple people in one setting, like it's on a TV, I think.
Okay, thank you, Carlin.
Yeah, and I don't think that would affect the sound for Elizabeth, that is.
Whoever
Okay.
was using it, it just said that they logged off of companion mode.
Okay, thank you.
You want to try again, Elizabeth? Oh, well.
Maybe
Yeah,
she could.
So,
Maybe she could call in on her phone.
Yeah, you can
For the
call
voice.
in.
I was going to say the
okay,
same.
in the meantime, we will table the voting on the minutes. And we will move on to public participation on items not on the agenda. And I want to read a statement before we go there. We are about to convene public comment. The law does not require public comment, but we have chosen to invite it because we believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns over issues. Having said that, please note that the board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed for discussion. Accordingly, please do not expect the board to react to your questions and comments tonight. This is because we take your concerns and questions seriously, and we want to have sufficient time to process and research issues if need requires it. We will, however, respond at a future meeting or have an appropriate staff member get back to you at an appropriate time. We are unable to entertain any comments or questions about personnel in open session. Please know, however, that we take personnel concerns very seriously. And on these matters, we ask that you go through appropriate administrative channels. Our communities have become polarized on a number of issues. That said, we want our school board meetings to serve as examples to our students that members of our school board and members of our community can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and can demonstrate mutual respect. In that spirit, we will insist that all speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect any divergent views that others possess. We ask that all speakers direct their comments to the board directly and not to the audience. In the unlikely event that the meeting becomes unruly, the board will recess and return once order has been restored. And public comment, I see that Daniel Wirtz has had his hand raised. So Daniel.
Thank you. Yeah. Let me put it down. So I'm the one who submitted that conflict of interest complaint. I'll leave names out of it for now, but it's perfectly fine with me if it's allowable, I guess, that be published publicly, my letter with my name on it and all that. And I also believe that the board, the WSESU board, should hear that publicly, perhaps as part of this meeting as an addition to the agenda. It's pertinent to both boards, and I don't see how both could avoid it. And then finally, on an unrelated topic that was briefly mentioned earlier, for the love of God, don't by force put a mask on any student again. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. The other person who has their hand raised is Katie Burke.
Hi. I just wanted to, I guess, ask a clarifying point. Because I think all school boards in the state of Vermont have to follow Robert's rules. Is that true? And this board functions under Robert's rules as well?
Yes, we function under Robert's rules.
And so I think it's helpful for people in the public to understand that the way that school board meetings are conducted are a result of a whole host of rules that have nothing to do with anybody on this board individually. Robert's rules is set up to kind of function from the top down, so you can maintain order. I didn't know that. That was a really important piece of the puzzle for me when I did learn that. So I'm not sure if that's helpful for anybody else out there. I also just wanted to ask the board to consider consulting with the Vermont Department of Health in light of our recent COVID numbers in our county and also in individual schools. We have not, the state of Vermont didn't fall in line with the CDC for most of the pandemic in terms of the way that Vermont carried themselves and the rules that they abided by. And it feels like the Department of Health is pulling back, the Agency of Ed is pulling back, and now we're starting to kind of follow the CDC. And we all have, and by we all, I mean schools, all have a liaison at the Vermont Department of Health. And I would like to see us or see the board be addressing case counts, COVID counts, and mitigation measures on a school by school, case by case basis with the Vermont Department of Health.
Okay, thank you, Katie. I believe our superintendent report will cover a little bit of what's happening COVID related. So thank you. Are there any other public comments? Do board members have any announcements? Hearing none, we will move on to the superintendent's report. And you're on, David.
It's a busy agenda tonight, so I'll try to make it quick. I will summarize some of the updates. I will share my screen here. I would assume you can see that, correct? You can see
Yes.
that, Amy?
Yes,
I-
we can see it.
I can't see you. That's the problem.
We're seeing it.
Okay, good. So just some general updates. And again, I'll try to be quick, but at the end, if you want to save questions for the end, we certainly can take it. We've already discussed this tonight. The COVID transmission cases went up at the end of the week and certainly over the weekend. I sent out a quick email update to parents today that we have to stay vigilant and we have to be able to staff our buildings. Both of those things are critical. Heartland and Albert Bridge seem to get hit the hardest over the weekend. Of those two, probably Heartland with 5 staff members, and I think it was, I see Christine's online, but she could probably clarify, but I think it was a total of 5 staff members and 7 or 8 students. And part of the issue is safety of students, of course, but also it's being able to operate our buildings, right? And again, the transmission count gets high, number of adults out, it becomes difficult to staff. And also, as somebody pointed out, it seems like the Vermont Department of Health, and we did reach out to them over the last couple of days, and we do have a person who is our contact at the Vermont Department of Health, and we also have access to the hospital as well. But they seem to have relinquished all of the categorical information to the CDC, which is a change, as Katie pointed out. We used to get a lot of guidance and direction from the Vermont Department of Health and the AOE, and we're getting none now. So essentially, the only quantitative piece of information that we have is that CDC rating by county, and last week it did put Windsor County as high transmission, and that changes weekly. And again, the board can discuss optional masking versus mandatory masking, but I think it would be, this is just my opinion as superintendent, I think it would be very disruptive to the school environment and to our children if one week we're in masks, the next week we're out of masks, the next week we're back in masks. I'm just saying that, but if the board feels differently, we can certainly talk about that when I finish these next few points. Did somebody put their hand up, Amy?
Yes,
Christine.
Christine, do you have the exact count?
Yeah, we've had 23 cases in the last 10 days. So I think we had
Okay.
14 this weekend, 2 more today, and 23 over the last 10 days.
Yeah. So Heartland really got hit. And to Christine's credit and to that staff's credit, we were able to keep the school open today, but that is, as somebody pointed out, can be day to day based on the adults that are able to supervise those classrooms. So it's a noteworthy topic, but we had a long meeting 2 weeks ago. We went optional with masks, and that was the decision. And so that's where we are right now. We can talk about it when I finish up here, if you want to. The equity audit RFPs, request for proposals, went out about 8 to 10 days ago. We sent them out to 10 vendors. We are partnering with Springfield School District on this equity audit. The proposals are due back on April 15th. We are, as I said, we're partnering with Springfield. We do need a process for the initial selection of a vendor. I'm suggesting, and we don't have to talk about this tonight, but I can reach out to the board chairs and see what they think too. But maybe the Springfield superintendent, myself, and 2 board members from Springfield and 2 board members from Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union would review those proposals and make a decision. I think the proposals are going to even though we tried to put the scope of work in the proposal, I think they're going to be very different in content and format. So it'll be interesting to look at. But essentially what we said, we really wanted to look with an equity lens at our policies, our procedures, our hiring practices, our curriculum, and our instructional practices. And that's what the equity audit RFP stated. And we're looking forward to getting those vendor proposals back by April 15th. Teacher and support staff master agreements are signed. A lot of people on this call put a lot of work into this, including Bill Yates, who chaired that committee and that team. It's nice to have signed master agreements for multiple years. It seemed like we were negotiating every year with our teachers and with our support staff. The teacher contract is a 3-year contract, but this year is one of those years. So that'll be a 2-year contract, essentially. The support staff contract is a contract that starts next year, July 1 of 22, and goes through to June 30 of 2025. Individual contracts will be going out soon. I want to give a shout out to Tina Canfield in HR, who's done a great job getting both union and at-will contracts in order. We try to get them out, certainly, if we can, by April 1st. That's our goal. If we can't, certainly very quickly within that frame. Did I hear another hand, Amy?
No,
Okay.
I'm not sure what that was.
All right. Parent conferences this Thursday and Friday, noon release days, both days. We want to make sure that our parent, and there's quite a few on, understand that because of the pandemic and some scheduling changes we had to make at the beginning of the year, that's why those parent conferences operate the way they operate. But I can assure certainly parents and anybody listening tonight that next year we'll go back to the original parent-teacher conference format. Teachers want that. Administrators want that. It's just that, again, those mid-year shifts are difficult to make. But we're looking forward to those, and those are being set up right now as we speak. Free lunch Wednesdays for staff. That was sort of just a little shout out and thank you to our teachers and support staff and administrators. And I'm told by the food service, Craig, our food service director, that they are going well. And last day of school is just in case people are keeping track. I think I put this in my email blast last week. The last day of school for this year. Sometimes it's tough to keep track of those snow days. It'll be a noon dismissal on June 17th. And I think that's it. The task force, our equity task force, will be meeting very soon to prioritize the action steps that we brainstormed before. And I want to give a shout out and a welcome to Mary Gannon, who's here tonight. She's going to begin her work with the board tonight, and as soon as we're done with any questions for my report, she'll begin. So Mary, welcome tonight, and I know the board's looking forward to hearing from you. And I think that's it. I'll stop sharing my screen, and there's a bunch of people who want to get in. So I'm going to stop presenting, and if there are any questions, comments, or discussion, feel free to do that now. And I'll let you call on people, Amy, right? I see Rebecca's hand.
Okay, yeah. Rebecca?
Yes, thank you. David, is there a way that you're keeping up with the COVID situation in terms of if the county sees a problem and if they continue to see a problem, is that something that you're kind of, have the action committee has their arms around and are willing to at least raise it immediately? And if we need to meet, then we'll meet and discuss how to move forward.
Yeah, I think what happens is it lags, right? The spread lags behind the transmission, if you will, and also our internal supervisory union transmission has sometimes lagged behind the statewide results, and you can see there's disparity all over the state, right? And there has been for months around who's closing schools, who's closing classrooms. And now I think the real issue is going to be who's optional masking, who's mandatory masking. And I guess the simple answer to your question, Rebecca, is yes. I mean, our nurses are part of the COVID task force. They monitor this daily. They monitor the accounts daily. Part of the problem this week was that I didn't, my fault, not the nurse's fault. I didn't get accurate information before I sent out that Friday email to parents because I was in that equity conference. I was supposed to be in San Diego. It ended up I was virtual, but that created a little bit of lag time. But basically, I get a daily report from the principals and from the nurses. So we could call an emergency meeting. And what I would say is that, and to the board's credit, in terms of optional or mandatory masking, you've held on to the authority for that. You haven't relinquished that particular piece. In some ways, I'm very thankful. To me, I mean, I think it should be a board decision that represents all of those schools. But yes, we do get that daily count, Rebecca. I see Katie, Amy. I don't know if you can see everybody.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I can. Katie.
Hi, Katie Burke. I have 3 kids in your school. I'm also a school nurse for another district. I spoke with Jill Lord, who's the director of community health over at Mount Escutney this morning, because I was just curious. Like, the CDC has deemed Windsor County, a high transmission county. What does that mean? Like, is Mount Escutney stressed? Are they at their limit? Do they have people in ICU? And Jill said that their hospital is not seeing people coming in. There are, in the entire state of Vermont, 2 people in ICU, 56 new cases today. Jill spoke with Margaret Worth, who is the infection control person over there. Margaret said from Friday to Monday, there were 7 new cases of COVID in Windsor County. And so it was just interesting to me. Like, I'm not really sure what the CDC is using to drive those metrics. And it just is hard. I also called the Vermont Department of Health. I spoke with Wendy Walsh. Wendy Walsh said that after April break, the Vermont Department of Health will be coming out with a new set of metrics that schools will be able to report in. So schools will be able to, it sounded like it was going to be like an if this, then that sort of situation. And that guidance should be coming out toward, the end of April, beginning of May.
Thanks, Katie. Better late than never, I guess. And just so you know, Katie, too, we also were in communication with Jill. We got that same information about, and I think that's part of the issue right now, both in terms of optional masking and transmission. It's really, not that people don't get sick, because people get sick. Don't get me wrong, but it's really around how sick, are they getting? And in particular with juvenile cases, it seems to be somewhat manageable, but nobody really wants to, nobody wants to get sick. That's the bottom line.
And I would also just add this, and I thought this was really interesting from Jill. She said, because I'm just really frustrated as a school nurse that we don't have anybody giving us direct guidance, right? Everybody's navigating in the dark. And so Hartford goes back to masking, and that makes everybody who doesn't go back to masking look like they're going rogue, right? Because the CDC has deemed the county as high risk. And it's the same thing at the hospital level. So Jill shared that Mount Escutney is following CDC guidance. Dartmouth-Hitchcock, right across the river, is not. So it's everybody in the same boat.
Yeah.
Thank you, Katie. Bill? You're muted.
Of course I am. I have to mute myself when I want to talk. I just want to piggyback on what Katie said, is the fact that the percentage difference from medium to high was pretty small. And I know that as I'm mostly coming in because Katie did mention Hartford. And I agree with David, and probably the general consensus here, unless it severely impacts staffing, and that really is the issue at Hartford right now. They're impacted with staffing. And so I'd rather go on, as David said, if we have a real need, just to convene an emergency meeting and take care of it as soon as possible, as opposed to jumping the gun.
And Bill, just as a follow-up to what you said, it's important to note that the AOE for COVID-related closures, they are giving waivers. So that would mean, and again, I don't know that we'd be able to call an emergency board meeting for this, but I think I have the authority, just like with inclement weather. If all of a sudden Christine Bourne calls me on a either late at night or the following morning and says, we just can't run today, then we would have to cancel, and we would have no school at Heartland. We would be able to get a waiver for Heartland, but I know, and we've got a lot of parents online, that's a terrible inconvenience, but it's also part of this up and down trend of this latest transmission piece. So we just have to be ready for that. I just, again, want to thank the staff. They do yeoman's work in covering classes, doing jobs they never intended to do, but they're doing a great job keeping our schools open. But I will tell you, and Christine just said it, that in Heartland, we were getting pretty close.
So as we have a pretty significant audience here, I'll clarify, for a school day to count, there has to be a majority of students in the building, which means that you have to have more than 50% of your students in the building for it to be counted as a school day. And David's absolutely right. He has the authority to declare basically a snow day, kind of, because of COVID. And then David would apply for a waiver, and the AOE can grant it or deny it. I mean, they could go either way. Chances are, though, Secretary French is pretty clear that they are accepting COVID days. Hartford had a school this year that was below, just one day that was below 50%, and so it couldn't be a school day, even though they didn't close school, but still. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you, David. And again, just a reminder to everyone who is in this meeting that masks are optional. So any parent who feels that it's important that their child wear a mask, they are certainly welcome to do so. As a parent who doesn't want their child to wear a mask, they are free to do that as well. And all staff, if you feel more comfortable wearing a mask, then absolutely wear a mask. It's all what we believe are our personal choice at this point in trying to stay healthy. So thank you. And it will take a lot of patience, and we're just working through all of this together. Were there any other comments on David's report? Without further ado, we move into items for action. And the first item for action, we welcome Mary Gannon to explain the equity work that we are moving into. So Mary, if you are here.
I am here. I can see
Excellent.
myself way down in the corner, but maybe some of you can't see me. So I look forward to when we might actually have an opportunity to be in person again, but this is what we need to do for now. So good evening. Thanks for giving me some time this evening when you have a very busy board agenda, and I know there's a lot going on. I'm also a parent of a senior at Keene High School down here in the southwest corner of New Hampshire, and maybe it didn't make the news up there, but we're having some struggles ourselves. So I just want to say, first off, for folks who don't know me and haven't heard about this conversation that I've been having with the board and with David in this preliminary stage, My name is Mary Gannon, and I have been working in Vermont, New Hampshire, and mostly parts of northern New England for almost the last 30 years, working with schools and municipalities, select boards around issues of diversity and equity. I've done a lot of law enforcement training. I like to say that if there's anywhere that people want to talk about diversity and equity and think about how to create welcoming communities and organizations or in towns, I'm happy to be part of that conversation. And we're doing the same work right here in Winchester. I live in Winchester. So that's a little bit about me. I think there's more of a bio in my proposal if folks are interested to hear more about what my background is. And I always like to say at the beginning when I bring these presentations and conversations to school board meetings and to communities is that, you know, first and foremost, I am a parent and I care deeply about public education. And I really see public education as an equalizer for all of our kids across the board. Because I really see how public education can be an opportunity to uplift all of our kids and give all of our students opportunities to grow, to expand their thinking, to build relationship skills, all the things that we know that we really want students to take out into their trajectories, into their futures. So I like to say that out front because I'm also aware right now that you all, as folks who are deeply involved in education, as school board members, as administrators, nurses, staff. I mean, I've been talking to custodial workers, cafeteria workers across the board. This is an incredibly challenging time. And I also like to say that I do see equity, the ideas of equity and inclusion as central to some of the challenges that are happening around the health crisis. And I can talk a little bit more about that, but I did want to say to this full community who's here tonight that when I think of the ideas that equity stands for, which is a safe, welcoming learning community where students and families, staff and teachers can bring their full selves, that everyone gets to be part of that, and that the work is trying to figure out how do we do that when we live in a society that in many ways has divided us by categories in lots of different ways. So there is an incredibly challenging moment, but I also like to think of it as an opportunity because the landscape is changing so dramatically. I feel like every day, and I live in New Hampshire, and I had just heard now from this report about what's happening for you all in Windsor County around transmission. So, we think about our relationship as a bi-state community here as well. And I'm sorry to hear that that's happening. So as I said, I think of these ideas that I'm talking about tonight and exploring further with this board as really central to everything that has to do with education, from special education to social emotional learning, to the ways that we build curriculum, to the ways that we think about lunch programs and who gets access to food, right? Like there's so many different ways that we can think about equity and inclusion across the landscape of schools. So my charge tonight, and I wanted to, for folks who are from the community and are kind of wondering like, what is this DEI work that's happening and who is this person? I wanted to just give a little bit of that background. Because I'm also very much aware that we are in an incredibly divisive time, and there's a lot of concerns about what is happening in public education, what are children being given in public education. And so I want to take this opportunity as I'm talking with you, the board, about what we are exploring together in the next professional development sessions and what the scope of work is to really also give you an opportunity to ask some questions, whether we get to all of those tonight or at another time, to really understand how when we collectively talk about issues of equity and diversity, I really believe that we are talking about all of our kids and that this is a body of work and a body of practice. I like to talk of it as a practice also that is good for everyone and that everyone benefits from that. So David, what you asked me to do tonight was to talk a little bit about the scope of work that I believe we're settling on. And my hope is that as we look at, I'm going to share my screen in a minute just to share some of these bulleted points with you, is to give you all an opportunity to think about how do you want to engage as a member of the board in this particular conversation, right? Because what's really true about diversity and equity work, and whether we talk about racism or we talk about disability issues, we talk about poverty, which we know are all issues that impact all of our communities, that we are all individually at different points in our understanding of this work and also the awareness that we have around it. Because we all come to this with very different lived experiences. Like I grew up in Boston, I had a very urban experience. Some folks had a rural experience. So our starting points in these conversations about diversity and equity are all very different. And we want to honor that we all carry our own stories and our own lived experiences of how we understand what it means when we talk about issues of racism, when we might be a family or an individual who's had no points of contact with people of color. Or how for someone like myself, I don't have people in my family who have particular kinds of disabilities. And so that's something that I'm always trying to better understand. So the point being that each of us come to this conversation in different points of understanding, but we want all of us, particularly board members, to think about where is your engagement around this. So I'm going to do my best, because I'm not so great at Google Meets, and see if I can present. I can screen share hoping that it's not too many. I have too many windows open, so I hope this isn't too confusing. Can you all see?
We can see your screen, Mary.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, that's a lot of windows. I like.
I know. Can folks see this document that says school board scope of work and timeline?
Yes.
Okay, great. And people can see it clearly. It's not, I shut down a lot of other windows of other documents. Okay, great. So I'm gonna take us through this. I don't want to take up a lot of time and I don't want to be a talking head. So I want to, also give the board a chance to respond. And then I also had some ideas about how we can move this forward into our next conversation. What I believe we came to was kind of 3 different bodies of work in the scope. And what I think is very exciting and a great opportunity, I always like to say this to school districts, is that there's a lot that's already happening in the school district around diversity and inclusion. Oftentimes more than many of us are even aware of. And sometimes it's because our kids are actually practicing some of this and teachers are doing some of this in their classrooms. But I love the idea that this school board really wanted to take this work up themselves and start where they're at a place where the governance and the policies and the practices, really for a district begin with a school board. So I think that's very vital. And I like to say that out front because that's a very strong leadership model. So what I have here is 3 different pieces of work that will most likely not sit in these vacuums, that we will see some overlap and we will see some building upon each of these ideas, and that these conversations will not necessarily be separate. But what I think is important to begin with is a facilitated conversation with you all, just to deepen the collective understanding of what is institutional racism, what is diversity and equity and inclusion? Like, what is the language that we're using? What is this idea of critical race theory that we keep hearing about? And is it really something that that we need to be concerned about? Is it really happening in our schools? So there would be an opportunity in some facilitated discussions, which I like to think of as professional development, but sometimes people get the ideas of professional development. So I see them as facilitated conversations that will give you some time as a board to build your language and conceptual framework of what it is that we're really talking about. And I say that because at the top of this document, you can see that I put anti-racism and equity initiatives. And, when we talk about equity, we're talking about a lot of different experiences of different forms of discrimination, harassment, oppression. And also, given the moment that we're in, there's been a lot of emphasis on anti-racism. So we're going to be looking at those two different terms and thinking about how they are intersecting and how they build off of each other. And that's why I put both these ideas of anti-racism and equity at the top of that. So we will spend some time with a range of different activities in these sessions, looking at some of this language and how do you want to begin thinking about how that language is matching the implementation of some of the policies and practices that you have constructed through the anti-racism policy document. So that would be the first point. And I'm going to pause. I can't see if folks have their hands raised. Okay.
Yeah, Mary, I was going to say Davis McGraw, board member, had a question or a comment.
Yeah, Marion, thanks for starting off there. I just got a message from someone who's got a smaller screen and is having some trouble seeing the document, and just asked that you might like maximize it and zoom in a little bit so it really fills the screen.
Sure.
Yeah, I
Yep.
appreciate it. Thanks.
Do that. Sure, thank you for that. I don't know if this helps. Does that help?
It's looking the same so far.
Yeah, that's better. That's better.
Oh, yeah, that's much better. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
great.
You
Great.
could even go one more notch maybe, but that's good.
Okay. I'm actually learning some things here. Okay, this is good. We're all learning, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
It's fun to learn.
It's fun to learn. Oh, goodness gracious. That's too much.
Oh, you had it probably on 2 when you go. Yeah, right there. That's good.
Perfect. Okay, great. I'm going to keep moving. And again, I really want to not be talking at you all the time, but just to be clear about where we see the scope moving. The second piece of work that I think, again, as I said earlier, there will definitely be some overlap here. We're not going to be talking about these, sort of in these compartmentalized fashion, is to have a conversation as a board about what does it mean to explore the possibility of creating a diversity equity coordinator position for the district. Some of you may know that this is a position that nationally they have really taken off in the last 5 to 10 years. And in Vermont, we have many districts where the work of diversity and equity is really centered in this position, in this particular coordinator position. And sometimes the language of how we describe that position is different as well. Some of you might be familiar out there, if you're in organizations or in corporations, they call them chief diversity officers. So I like to think of this person as the chief diversity officer for a district. But some of them play different roles depending on the district, the size of the district, the setup of the school district. One that I'm most familiar with right now is in Hartford with the diversity and equity coordinator who is about to finish her first year. And she's done an incredible job and working in the different schools. And that's a pretty powerful role for that district in terms of how they are being able to sustain the diversity and equity work. So what we would do as part of this conversation is spend some time thinking about what does it mean for your district to actually have this position? And what would a job description look like? One of the things that I think is really important to do at the onset of this conversation is, does this seem like the right time for a diversity and equity coordinator? Is the district culture prepared for welcoming and retaining this new position and thinking about the sustainability of it? And then also, like, where would this position be in the organizational chart in the school district? And then again, if this is something that moves forward, the work that I've done in a lot of places, not just in school districts, but in other contexts, is looking at the networks where you can post this kind of position so that you might create a really diverse pool of candidates, which is also really important. So that would be, I think, as we are beginning to think about what does it mean for this district, because you're taking the work that Melissa Crum has done with you. You have the town committee, you have this anti-racism task force. You have a lot of structures in place that are really positive and foundational. What would it mean to create this position and have it functioning in Windsor Southeast. So that would be another piece of our work, and we would spend some time with that. And I think that is also part of this third scope of work, which is really spending some time with the Anti-Racism Task Force to look at what are some of the actionable goals that came out of some of the work that you did with Melissa Crown, which I've been looking at this afternoon. It's very powerful. There's some really wonderful, really important pieces of work that was done there. And how could that be put into a 3-year action plan or put into a strategic plan and begin to think about, not just putting it on paper, but what does it really look like to implement that? And I see that also as an opportunity to really bring some administrators and staff and board members together on that particular collaboration. And one of the reasons why I like to do that is I think it gives people a sense of agency, that they're included in the process. And when people feel included, it's easier for them to take accountability and to take some responsibility for what happens. So we would also talk about what that could look like. Sorry, I've been talking a lot today. What that could look like and who would we want to bring into those conversations. So my last piece for you, and then I'll stop and hear comments, is I'm thinking about next tasks. And I think around the professional development piece, which was the first bulleted scope that I presented to you tonight, is to really, we need to think about board meeting times. I would recommend 2 2-hour sessions for that initial piece of work. I think sometimes, I don't know about y'all, but I don't think any of us want to be here more than 2 hours in an evening. But it also gives you some time to absorb and think about the work that we've done in the conversations and come back and be able to engage again in a different way. And part of what I always do with groups is very simple needs assessment, just a quick survey on Google or another platform where it gives you a chance to give me some input on your sort of individual needs, but what you think collectively would be helpful. And then I have some other assignments that I sort of like homework that I give to you in preparation. So that would be just around the professional development piece, which I think is the piece that we want to start with. So I'm going to stop now and see if there's questions or clarifications, or if there's more information that is needed at this point. And I'm going to stop screen sharing.
Thank you, Mary. Are there any questions from board members? Davis.
Yeah, and thanks for running that down, Mary, and for blowing the text up a little bit there too.
Sure.
I guess I would just be I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about the needs assessment piece. If you have any examples of the types of questions, the structure, the format of that discussion. I know that can be a really powerful tool to use, and I just kind of like to know what's going on before I dive into it. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm happy to answer that. I would agree with you. I always like to say that I think the work begins in a lot of ways in communities and in organizations when you start with a needs assessment tool, because that's when people feel invited into the process. So when I do this work, in communities, I think it's can be really helpful, because again, it gives people some sense of like what I care about and what's important to me really matters. And I get to give some input around that. So that's exactly how I feel in terms of providing this tool for the board, is to give you all a chance to give me some intel and some input. Because really, I've been having these conversations with Superintendent Baker and this one other conversation with you, but I might be making a lot of assumptions about what it is that you need or where you are at individually. So one of the ways that I do that, Davis, is like it's nothing extensive. In the time of COVID, I've been doing a lot of Google survey where I send something out and with 5 or 6 different questions on a protocol. It's nothing lengthy. Asking for people to give me input about what assets do they bring to this conversation, what are their challenges, what would they see. So it's pretty basic in terms of just trying to get folks to help me think about how we design the conversation. Another way that I can do it that I really prefer, and I will be doing this with a different district on a longer assessment, is actually sitting with people and having conversations and sort of doing something that's more dialogic, like interactive. And I have found that to be really helpful. And again, it really gives people a chance to talk about something that they may never have spoken about before, but they want to begin engaging in the work. So I think they serve a couple of different purposes, needs assessments. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it largely does. Thank you. And I guess the only other thing that I would wonder, and forgive me if I'm putting the cart before the horse a little bit here, but I appreciate that this framework has enough space in it that, we're starting with this kind of higher level, board level cohesion, getting together, going through this professional development, and then working downward in our process. Is there that needs assessment? Is that something that you typically see extended to other levels of stakeholders, to our administration, teachers, community members? Like, how do we get that kind of holistic view of where kind of perception is on other other stakeholder cohorts?
I love that question, and it. So yes, love that question, and yes, for the purposes of where I think the scope of work that I'm contracting with you right now, I'm interested in getting as much input from you all so that we can do this work together in a way that is going to serve you the best. And I did hear David talk about this earlier, and have heard through different networks about the RFP that's being sent around for that type of survey data collection for Springfield and the district. In that particular context and situation, I would absolutely, if I were engaged with that, one of the first things that I would be doing is bringing in the community and thinking about who those stakeholder groups are and making sure that they're part of the process. If there's something around this needs assessment that you as a board say, you know what, Mary, we'd like you to gather some information from a different stakeholder group, I'm totally open to that.
Great. Yeah, I appreciate the clarification. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Thank you, Mary. That was quite informative and very helpful. One of the questions I had is, we had a group that started talking about these issues some time ago. David had invited the community, and several folks had signed up, and we met on several occasions and developed, went through some of the some of the issues you raised, sort of like, what do we all bring to this to this plate? What and where are we in this journey, And so I don't know if David has shared that with you, but I'm just, and you don't have to answer that now, but I'm just wondering if you may either want this group to participate at some point, only because it was a very valuable group and productive, and people were very engaged. So that's my question.
Thanks, Rebecca, for that. I always say, if there's information, I'll take anything that will help all of us, really do a good job. So if there's information, if there's conversations that have been recorded, or that there's some way to get some, I don't like to call it data, but the material that you're talking about or the substance of it, I would absolutely welcome that. If there's, again, and this is for you all to decide as a board, if there was an opportunity or an interest in having me speak with a different stakeholder group as part of our work together, or something that happened previously, as I think you're mentioning, Rebecca, I'm very open to that. And the other thing I want to say, folks, is I certainly don't want to duplicate efforts either, right? For all kinds of reasons, mostly because of resources. So, and our time is precious. So if there are bodies of, if there's prior work that has been done that I'm not aware of that we could bring to this conversation, I'm very happy to give that attention. So thank you for bringing that up, Rebecca.
David, and then Elizabeth.
Yeah, and I just want to follow up on what Rebecca said, because the group she's referring to, and they did work hard. They met over the course of a couple of years. Called it the Anti-Racism and Equity Task Force. It had some community members, staff members, administrators, and a couple of board members too that sat on that. I know Rebecca and Elizabeth for sure. But you did refer to that, I think, in your scope of work tonight, that, that's the group that worked with Melissa Crum. And there is a summary document that I can send you, Mira, if I haven't already sent it to you, that outlines some of the summary of that work and then some action steps that we brainstormed. We have not timelined. We didn't create a timeline for those action steps yet, but the action steps are there. So Rebecca, that's a good point. We want to tie that into Mary's work. And so the next time that group meets, and I'm getting ready to send out an email to that group, there are a couple of things I want that group to look at and read. But also I want Mary to have a chance to meet with that group and get caught up on the work that we did. So thanks for bringing that up.
And I think I'm embarrassed to say, I think I have that document right in front of me, Rebecca. So I think I know what you're referencing. David, you said.
Yeah, I might have sent it to you. Yeah. We'll
it,
make sure tomorrow it's the right document. Yeah, that's.
Was it 4 different groups, like 4 different groups that gave?
Exactly.
Okay.
But actually we took it from that. I think the document you've got is the group document that's got the group names at the top. But we then took that and made I don't think I sent you the summary document. I will send you that, also. But it's basically the same document, just a little cleaner.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you need to
hear me all right?
turn your volume off on your
I did.
computer. Good. Now you
I
got it.
did. I got it. Okay. I just wanted to add that part of the reason for you joining us, Mary, is that having that group that Rebecca's talking about and what David's talking about it was really rich and useful, and we were able to dig deep into this work. But it also put half of our board on a completely different level of understanding than the other half of our board, and that's part of the problem. So we want to be able to make sure that we're all have a common language. That's it. Thank you.
And this is Amy. I just wanted to make a comment, an observation that I've had for a long time, but it's become even more apparent in probably the last 2 to 3 weeks, is that there's a significant amount of intersection between our equity work and different groups that we're looking at for equity. There's anti-racism, but within anti-racism, there's also how we care and welcome all groups of people, such as our LGBTQ plus population. And there is significant intersection in both of those. So it's become more apparent in the past couple of weeks as more is in the news and social media and comments made in our community. So thank you.
And Amy, just quickly, thank you for that, because again, I think it is important that what we focus on is, do members of communities who, in my work, I talk about it historically, but also currently, are experiencing, discrimination. We could certainly talk about that in terms of categories, the legal protected categories of, women, different folks from different religious backgrounds, et cetera, creed, color, et cetera. And so if we can really keep at the center of this, that we want to create educational spaces and learning communities where all of our kids can bring themselves and where they can be learning from each other. Because whether some of us like it or not, the fact is that the demographic is changing dramatically, and we are already seeing that in northern New England, and we will continue to see that. And so I always think when I'm feeling uncomfortable about a particular topic or an issue, what I try to do is to put my kid at the center and think about what is it that she needs so that she can be, a useful, participatory member of society when she leaves public education. And so, that's really what we're working on. And there's no doubt we all have different perspectives about this. We have different ideologies. We have different opinions. But I think at the end of the day, just really keeping our children and the ideals of public education at the center, I think will move the equity work where we need it to go.
Thank you, Mary. We have Caitlin Gould with their hand raised.
Yes, hi, sorry, I'm on Misty's. I'm at the rec center. So I just have a couple questions. So I've heard you guys mention different groups, and you guys just kind of keep referring to groups, and you're not specifying. So if you could specify what groups it is you're talking about. And then I guess my major question is with this equity work, how are you going to collect the data to determine if these groups that you keep referring to, how is it inhibiting their ability to access their education within the school? And is that the issue, that they're not able to access their education, or is it that there's just, you guys feel discrimination?
Amy, would you like me to take that one?
I would, Mary, thank you.
Yeah, or
Now,
David,
what I was
go
going to do is I could speak to the groups part of it. I mean,
ahead, David, that's great.
yeah, and then because it might have been some misspeaking that went on, but there aren't groups out there that have been working on this. There's a group. It was established about 2.5 years ago, pre-COVID. It endured, the 2 years of COVID, but it was the Anti-Racism and Equity Task Force. That was made up of some teachers, administrators, board members, community members. That's the only group that's been working intensely and focused on this. And of course, the other group is the board. And I think what Elizabeth was saying, and I agree, some of the board members were on that task force, some were not. And we want to get everybody kind of on the same page. So there are no groups out there. There's just that one group that's done that work with Melissa Crum and one other consultant. Sorry, Mary, go ahead. If you wanted to speak to the other piece of it in terms of, what's the ultimate purpose?
Yeah, sure. And I'm sorry, was it Caitlin? I'm not sure who the person was that posted the question, but I wanted to make sure that that first part was answered for you around the groups.
Yeah, so that I guess would be part of the question. And then my second part would be what groups are you trying to identify within this school, to provide the equity work for?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. I appreciate you bringing that forward, because it's true. Sometimes we talk in these ambiguities. So I'll just speak for myself in my work. And Caitlin, when I'm talking about groups that we are concerned or having an experience where there's disparity in their ability to learn, I think about that for kids with a range of different disabilities, as an example. So that would be one particular group of students or a community of students who are often, who often have a difficult time succeeding and being a member of a learning community because of the range of different disabilities that they might bring. And some of those disabilities, we know that they can get supports through IEPs, but that's not always the case. And then we have other issues around mental health, as I'm sure we're all very familiar with, with this, COVID pandemic. So that would be one particular group. I also think of right now, one that is really on my mind because of some of the things that are happening nationally is students who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, with a transgender identity, or somewhere on the gender spectrum, who, as we know nationally, there's some significant laws that are being implemented that I feel, in terms of their experience in an educational system, are really limiting their ability to feel like they can bring themselves to the school community. So that would be another example of when I'm talking about a group. And so I think your question around is interesting, because there's lots of different ways that people or students or even staff and faculty have an experience sometimes of not being either represented in a curriculum or feeling that they're invisible sometimes in classrooms for a range of different reasons. These are not issues that I want to say are for the most part intentional on the part of educators or school leaders or community members, right? It's just that when we are often, again, when I talked earlier about what does it mean to come from the different lived experiences that we all bring to this conversation, that some of us may have more ease or understanding of what it means to have a few children of color, for example, in a classroom in a very rural white community. And we want to make sure that the curriculum, some of the literature that gets read, if it's a younger K-5 level, the visual representations in a school building reflect the children who are there. So that would be an example of what it might mean for us, to be talking about how schools can make sure that the children who come there and the staff and faculty who come there feel that they're represented. And it's hard work, it's not something that happens overnight. I think we have to give attention to a lot of different aspects of that. I'll give you one quick example and then I want to stop talking. I remember I have several friends who are part of the disability rights community. And I remember telling this one friend of mine who has been in a wheelchair since she was 5 years old, that I was delighted as a mom who was pushing a jogging stroller, that the disability rights communities had made sure that the sidewalk edges and curbs were leveled off, right? So that I was easily able to move my child around in a stroller. And that was an example of how I think all of these accommodations or ways that we think about accessibility and inclusion really support all of us. Like we all benefit from it. So I hope that's helpful in terms of your question.
Thank you, Mary. There's also an item that I found, a letter from the associations, Vermont School Board Association, Vermont Superintendents Association, and Vermont Principals Association. Back in January of 2018, there was a conference where members from all of these associations came together and worked for about 3 days on a working definition of educational equity. And so this isn't work that has just begun in the last 2 to 3 months. This is work that has been happening even prior to 2018. The state has been working on equity prior to 2018, and we are following because it is keeping in mind what is important for students and for our faculty and staff to feel welcomed and to feel represented in how they're learning. And also because we want our students to go out into the world, maybe not forever, come back to Windsor and work in our communities, but the way a person can have a better understanding of the world is to have an experience in their school that has equity, that is looking at all, I lost my train of thought, but just takes into and gives experiences to all students, taking into consideration a lot of different thoughts, a lot of different ideologies and considerations. So thank you. And Katie, your hand is raised.
Hi, thanks so much. I don't want to discount anything that you've said, Amy. I do think it's really important if a school board is following Robert's rules that the moderator mediates and moderates the meeting. And I don't want that to be personal. I don't know, maybe I think your opinions are important, but I think it's tricky because you have the position as moderator on the board. And I just want to express caution moving forward, I guess.
Thank you, Katie. And I was bringing to the attention that this work has been in process in the state of Vermont and beyond since before 2018. It's not something that has just been happening. And the reason that it's been happening in the state of Vermont is to bring quality educational experiences for all of our students. And Bill, your hand was raised.
I was going to respond to Katie, and I've decided not to.
Okay, thank you. And we have Ryan G, followed by Rebecca Roisman.
Yes, please.
I think you might have.
Can you hear me okay?
Now we've got it.
Hold on.
I think everybody else needs to turn their sound off in that auditorium.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Good evening, WSESU board and guest speaker. I had a quick question for our guests. It's a yes or no question. From what I'm gathering, this board is going to you for guidance for a curriculum for our district.
Yeah, no, I'll answer that, Mary. No, that's not true. That wasn't part of anything she talked about tonight.
Okay, well, thank you for clarification. I was hoping we could get some more blunt and direct direction for what kind of curriculum we're talking about having in the district and what kind of discussions are going to be held with the students.
David, are you taking that one or?
Yeah, I can take that too. I'm not sure what Amy, but I can take that one. No, there's again, Ryan, you're way ahead of the game here. There's no efforts to work on curriculum now. What you might be confusing it with is the fact that we are going to conduct an equity audit, which will look at our current curriculum and our current instructional practices and see if there are any inherent biases in those or any concerns about those from an equity perspective. But there's no proposed curriculum, there's no work on curriculum until we finish that equity audit.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. So, I mean, I believe this audit's been going on for over a year now. You must have some data to share about how, what kind of data you're even using to make these decisions.
Yeah, Ryan, you might have missed the beginning of the meeting, but we haven't even started the audit yet. The audit won't start until probably summertime. What we're doing right now is looking for people like Mary and other consultants and other companies that do that kind of work. So it hasn't even begun yet.
Okay,
Thank you,
Dr.
Ryan.
Baker.
Next, Rebecca.
I just wanted to comment. There's an echo.
That might be somebody, volume. Okay, now we got it.
Okay, I just wanted to comment. I know that at some point in 2021, Springfield had a meeting with their community and their board. And one of the comments made by a student, an ex-student of Springfield, that that stuck in my mind was her comment. She graduated, I guess, from Springfield High School. Her comment was, and lives right now in the Boston area, that she was hoping that the students today that are being taught in her school system will be prepared to go out and work in a diverse environment, in a diverse community. So it sounded like the experience she did not have, but would have really valued in terms of preparing her for the job market. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Rebecca. Amanda Smith.
Thank you, Amy. And thank you to all the board members, and thank you, Mary. I wanted to just say I'm super proud that you are all doing this work. It makes a difference. I'm looking forward to hearing about the difference this makes for the children and the staff in our community. As someone who went to and graduated from Windsor High School, as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, I can say that my experience at Windsor was not always a pleasant one. It was sometimes very difficult. And some of the people that I care deeply about experienced discrimination and racism. And I know we can do better. And it inspires me that you're doing the work to move forward. So rather than being nervous or upset about this work, I just wanted to balance it that there are a lot of people that are cheering and applauding, and there are happy tears because so much of this work is so long overdue. So thank you. Continue to be brave, continue to have these conversations, because we can. We are a wonderful community, and everyone deserves to feel that sense of belonging. Our children deserve to feel safe. Our children deserve to feel encouraged and welcome. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. I have Megan Reed with their hand up.
Hi, thank you. I just want to speak on behalf of what you're doing and just say thank you so much for bringing this work, and thank you, Mary, for being here today and talking to us about it. I really appreciate that by doing this work, you are going to be creating a safe place for all of our children. As they grow, I hope that they are encouraged to have these tools that I know that I did not necessarily was taught growing up, that will help them be able to deal with adversity and make improvements in our community and really be able to include everyone. I'm hoping that this empowers our children to have the education that I know I wish I had, and we can make changes in our community. So thank you so much for doing this work, and I am just very thankful that this is all happening. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Colleen Spence.
Thank you, Amy. I'm so glad to hear from public tonight and comments from everybody. And I'm so glad that you're here, Mary. I was just wondering if maybe as we have people bringing in questions and comments, if they could introduce themselves and tell us how they're connected in our community and our school, since this is a big group. I just think it would be nice to hear. That's it.
Colleen, do you mean before someone speaks?
Oh, as people, yeah, just before you say something, maybe introduce yourself and just tell us.
True, I'm sorry, I should have asked people to do that. I mentioned names as I was calling.
Yeah, no. And people are generally, I just wanted to put it out there more
Right.
formally.
Okay, thank you, Colleen.
Thank you.
Next, we have Daniel Wertz.
Hi, Dan Wirtz, live in Windsor, father of two. A lot seems to be hinging on the outcomes of the equity audit, and for that to be used as a piece of strong, robust data. I want to caution you, though, that there's a logic issue and a kind of data unknown thing baked in there, because even if an equity audit were to find some difference in some measurable student outcomes by whatever categories it's broken into, that itself does not mean that the school system has any cause to those differences occurring. Thomas Sowell wrote a wonderful whole book on this called Discrimination and Disparities. I'd like to throw that in there for thought consideration, even if there are findings that look actionable in such an audit. Thank you.
Can I quickly comment to that, Amy?
Certainly. Thank you, Mary.
I know this is getting long, but Daniel, I think it was, thank you. I'm very aware of that piece of literature. So I appreciate you bringing that into the conversation. And, you know, it is interesting about data collection because, you know, I will be honest, oftentimes when I've been involved in like large, you know, audits or surveys, it's sort of like the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that goes out every couple of years. Folks are familiar with YRBS, you know, and we get that information about what's really happening to our kids. And every year that I look at that, you know, what I see doesn't necessarily, I mean, it concerns me, but I'm not surprised by it, because what we know is that we are trying to hold educational communities in a system where disparities already exist, right? Like we live in a society where those disparities exist. Institutions, healthcare, law enforcement, across the board, you know, we have those disparities in our social system. So I think I appreciate your word of caution on that. And I think what's important for school districts to do those is to get a real picture of what the experience might be for voices and groups in those communities who don't necessarily always have a voice. And yet oftentimes what we will get from it is the kinds of disparities that most of us who are in education know exist already. And so what I think is powerful about those tools is being able to craft specific responses to the things that these surveys will often find. So, you know, again, we are not, Windsor is in the state of Vermont, right? And your school district is in a community. So we are all connected and deeply embedded in all of these different systems and impacted by them. So thank you for that comment.
Thank you, Mary. Bill Yates.
You're muted, Bill. Bill's going to get his sound on here real soon.
Yeah, I keep hitting the mute button, and I you know, basically I keep turning it on when I want to talk. A few community members have talked about being a student of Windsor, which I was, and as an individual who basically checks off all the boxes of privilege. Okay, white, male, educated, come from a good home, all those. Looking back on my experience, you know, especially of going to school in Windsor, and that in the early 80s, the simple fact that the environment was completely non-welcoming of anybody who did not fit those check marks, especially those of the LGBTQ community. And I'm extremely proud of the work that this district is doing to change that, to recognize the fact that what existed back in the past was an environment that was completely unwelcoming and damaging. So many of my classmates went through hell and didn't recognize, took them years to heal. And I think that's the important things that we're trying to fix, not damaging our next generation like my generation did.
Thank you, Bill. Anne Griffin.
Hello. Hi, Anne Griffin. I live in Windsor. I have 2 elementary school children at State Street School. I'm really excited about this. I think, I love everything that Mary has presented, and I think it's great. I think my 2 children are so, how do I want to say it? So aware of diversity already, like so much more than I ever was at 8 and 11, and I think they're extremely accepting of it, and I think that this community does a really good job of that already, so I love it. As a parent of younger children, I'm still newer to how all of this works, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding that what we're talking about right now is evaluating the curriculum at school to be sure that we don't have any gaps where children might be falling through the cracks and getting the same education as everyone else. If I'm understanding it, that's what the first step is. And then if there are any gaps, then we would be looking at changing curriculum in order to, or maybe not curriculum, but changing something within the structure of the school to make sure those kids don't fall through the cracks. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, I think, Anne, that was a good summary. Basically, some of that baseline data, though, that you just described, it won't be Mary. Well, Mary could put in a proposal for that equity audit. I mean, we haven't. She certainly we sent her the RFP, but it will be whatever group gets hired to do that audit will do that work. But you summarized exactly. And it won't be just curriculum, it'll be some of our hiring practices, our policies, our procedures, just to look at those with an equity lens, but just to get some baseline data, again, given the cautions that Daniel pointed out.
And we would be then having those further discussions, like parents and the public get to be involved when we talk about if there's curriculum that we're changing, right? And like without being really specific, and I'm not trying to I don't want to go off on some tangent because we're not talking about it now, but just I know that there are a lot of parents that are, when they're hearing this, the equity talk and all this, or our brains are going to some places, some of us that are like, well, what are we going to be teaching, so just that's where I'm coming from as far as what are we teaching them? I mean, we need to make sure that everyone there is able to get the same education and that they're not falling through cracks because of any, item that may cause that. But we're not talking about specific curriculum right now and what we're teaching them, right?
That's correct. And to your point, Anne, when we finish, when we get some of that baseline data, and Mary alluded to this, but I know this board's committed to community forums, parent forums, where we discuss that data and talk about where we go from here. That's an important voice at that table.
Okay, thank you.
And I just a second, because I think this is important to drill on this point just a little bit, Anne. So thank you for bringing it, because we know, sort of the elephant in the room here is that there's a national conversation that people are very concerned about around this idea of critical race theory and what our kids are getting, right? So I'm putting that over here in the parking lot. What I want to say about it is when we're looking at our curriculum, what we want to make sure is that, first of all, it's meeting the Vermont standards, right? There's some new standards in place in Vermont around particular kind of cultural and ethnic representations, that we are giving a full picture of how languages are taught, how history is taught. So it's also really looking at, does the curriculum that some of us were getting, I was a kid of the 70s or the 60s, does it match what our kids need now? And that can mean a whole bunch of things. And that's for kids across the board, right? The other thing I'll say is that a quick example of why this is so important. I was just saying this to a school district up in Maine last week. There's a very similar demographic to Windsor. It's also to take a look at, for example, what children get put into advanced placement classes, right? And we know nationally that what we're seeing is it's a certain population of children who are being considered for advanced placement in high school classes. When I know here in Winchester, the kids who are living in the trailer park or who live in some of the lower socioeconomic areas of my community are already getting tracked for something that's not advanced placement, just because of their zip code. So when we talk about equity and for all kids, I want to say that those are things that we're talking about. Does everyone get a chance at some of those opportunities and not just particular groups of kids? And that's really an issue around poverty and socioeconomic issues as well.
Thank you, Mary.
Katie Burke.
I just had a quick question for the board, because I think all of this equity work is awesome, and it sounds like it's needed. It's been needed for generations. I'm just wondering if the board has ever considered a student representative or student voice to be present on the board. They don't have to stay for the whole meeting, but just to, like, in some ways it feels like we're adults making decisions or having these conversations without the kids. And so could there be student representation on the board around these equity issues moving forward?
At the Mount Ascutney School District, because we're a K-12, there are I believe a couple of high school students who have shown interest in participating on the board. There's been a lot of different issues happening that the board has had to deal with. So as far as students sitting in on a meeting, they haven't had that opportunity yet, but there is interest, and that's something that we have wanted at the Mount Ascutney School District for a few years now. Windsor, when it was just the Windsor School District, we did have student representation who came to all of our board meetings and gave some sort of either input or comments, or just letting the board know what was happening from the perspective of a high school student. So thank you. We're there. We just need to.
I just need to get like the student report, right? Like what's going on in there, what are they seeing in the hallways, and what is important to them, and how can we as adults step in and help them and advocate for them. So that's awesome to hear, and I hope that we see students soon.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a matter of a student being interested, available, and not otherwise torn in other directions. So it is going to, we're still working, but we're in that direction. So thank you. Rebecca.
That's an excellent point, Katie. I think the other piece that's really important is that when you have student representation, they are at the table, and other students are watching that are and so it is an important one that needs to happen probably sooner than later. And so thank you for that. And Mary, and I just wanted to comment on your example of AP classes as a guidance counselor in Claremont. At the technical center and also at the high school level, and also worked with middle school students, it was so clear that you were able to see at the 9th grade level who was going into AP classes and who was not. And it was, and that is really sad, because I think sometimes we just use and you know, Daniel spoke earlier about data, but we just use numbers, results of math, English, to push students in a certain direction. And if you're not in that ballpark, if you're not in that group, that's not where you're going. You're not going to be encouraged to even consider going down that road. And it does leave a lot of our students behind without us even realizing. And it's pretty sad. So that AP example was a really good one.
Thank you, Rebecca. Davis?
Yeah, and I realize I may have buried the lead a little bit with my initial question, but when I was talking about stakeholder cohorts, one of the groups I was very specifically thinking about was students, and making sure we get student voice in as part of any kind of needs assessment that we do, because I mean, that's why all of us are here. But thank you for bringing that up more specifically. And I think just in general, one thing that really I find really heartening about embarking on this work and starting to build a plan and starting to look at what that process looks like is that it gives us some sort of novel opportunities to really think outside of the box and how we're engaging our students on these issues, right? Because it is tough. Students have busy lives, just like anybody in the community does. It can be hard to get to these meetings. So maybe what are other venues where we can meet students and get that student voice? I mean, I think that's a conversation we can always be having, but it's certainly of paramount importance in any of this equity work. So thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you. And just in terms, I'm looking at the time. It is 8:16 and we still have quite a bit of an agenda to get through tonight. Does anyone have any more comments or questions for Mary? And Mary, did you have anything more that you wanted to share?
No, I don't have anything more specific. I think, again, I will send the document that I just shared to David to share with the board in terms of, the actual concrete next steps, tasks that we need to figure out. Most of it's really around timeline.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then Amy, you and I can work with Mary around setting up those meetings, because I think that's to have a concentrated block of time to do the work. You can see how this, and these are incredible discussions, but it's tough in the middle of a business meeting. So I like your idea of blocking out 2 hour, and certainly there'll be public meetings, where we can get started on this work.
Great, thank you. I look forward to getting all of that scheduled, looking at calendars. So thank you very much, Mary. Okay, we are moving on to our next topic. It's the MTSS Recovery Update Summer Academy. And I understand that Brittany is not well today. Brittany, if you are listening, I hope you are, and that you're recovering, that you feel better soon. But Katie Ahern is here.
Yeah, and Katie, between you and Angie, you can decide. Again, it's getting late, but what's the whatever you think is the most important, we should get that done tonight.
Angie, I think Angie, you're talking, but you're muted.
Yeah, go ahead, Angie. Yeah, you might be muted, Angie.
I think Angie might be having some microphone issues.
Yeah, it doesn't look like you're muted, but it looks like the microphone might be a little bit.
So we do have a presentation, and The beginning part was some data that Brittany had wanted to share out that we've recently kept, and that is all accessible on the data dashboard. And then we had been asked to do an update on our MTSS process, which has a little blurb on Summer Academy. There's not much there, but Angie was going to present the beginning part. Still can't hear
Still
you,
think that
Angie.
microphone is a little. We're working on technology here.
So I can, unfortunately, I can't speak very well to the data. I know the rest of it, but the data was definitely Brittany and Angie's piece. And I wouldn't want to misstep.
Katie, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, now we've got.
So I have two computers happening here. So I'm going to share my screen so that I can share the Brittany's presentation on the recovery plan update. Oops. Wrong one. Hang on. Okay, where is the meat? Too many tabs,
okay.
sorry.
And while we're waiting for those in the audience who are wondering what is MTSS, it is multi-tiered systems of support, and that is how we are meeting all of the needs for our students.
So
ahead,
I
Angie.
sent my Brittany would have been here tonight, but she is definitely feeling under the weather. And so on her behalf, I'm going to try to do my best to present the data on the recovery plan. We will send the slideshow to the board so that you can look more carefully at it. But as you may recall, in our recovery plan, which you can find on the wsesu.net website on curriculum, if you follow the links to all things recovery, our recovery plans there. In goal 1, we had an attendance goal to increase attendance by 15% as is measured by our attendance records. And unexcused absent risk factors include students with 8 or more unexcused absences. While this percent is higher than last year, as shown on the right side of the first graph, it seems to be remaining steady, which means we aren't getting a lot of additional students meeting the threshold of unexcused absences. At-risk attendance includes students with lower than 90% attendance. That means they are less than 90% in attendance. These numbers have gone down for several of our buildings. So that is on the right side of the slide. Academic achievement. By June, 80% of our teachers will report that at least 80% of their students have reached grade level benchmarks in numeracy, literacy, and writing as measured by local service survey data. I would like to tell you a little bit about that goal. The recovery plan goal was based on where we were almost a year ago. We were writing that plan in May of 2021. And because of Brittany's hard work as our data guru, if you will, we are now able to provide more concrete data sets that we can actually compare from one data period to the next. So when we do our reflection, phase 3 of the recovery plan, which is required that we look at the recovery plan in the spring, in May, and we write a report about how we met our goals. This particular goal
we can now use academic data rather than teacher perception. This teacher perception was based on a survey that we gave because you may recall last year we were not, we did not have as much testing that we are doing now. This is a new graphic, and I wanted to include this for the presentation. As a result of the pandemic, the discrepancy between students' academic achievement is extremely broad. It is important to consider the progress we are making and the rate at which we are doing so, because not all students are going to be on grade level. There will be a wide spectrum of learners. I wanted to share our progress, and this is in Brittany's words. I wanted to share our progress rates from our Track My Progress scores. Track My Progress identifies an average progress rate nationally at 1.0. This means that if you have a progress rate of 2.0, you are progressing at 2 times the rate of the national average. As you can see, and that is in this bottom part of this slide, we have always progressed slightly higher than the average in the area of math, but we are currently progressing at 4 times the national average. We can speculate that this is because we were able, this is because last year we were able to remain in school. Sorry, I lost my place. In school 5 days per week, which was not the trend nationally. This year, we were able to remain in school 5 days per week and full days, which have made a massive difference. This is the same slide looking at literacy, and the same trend can be seen. We are currently progressing at 2 times that of the national average on our Track My Progress assessment. More students took the exact path assessment this winter than in the fall. As you may recall, there were absences and things that we were dealing with in the fall as well as in the winter. So we still didn't have a complete picture of this. We had to extend the window for both Exact Path and Track My Progress due to COVID absences, which allowed us to ensure we got updated scores for more of our students. Kindergarten students also took Exact Path this winter, and they didn't do that in the fall. Exact Path shows slightly more students scoring in red and yellow than in the fall. However, it's hard to know if that was due to challenges with this particular computerized assessment for our kindergarten students. This slide shows the Track My Progress scores over time from fall of 2019. We typically conduct Track My Progress 3 times a year. Some years we didn't, so you can see that in this slide. Track My Progress scores in math show that we have more in green and blue, which is proficient and above, than in the fall, and are meeting benchmarks similar to those in the past. This makes sense considering our progress rates. Exact Path reading scores align with math scores, and our Fountas and Pinnell, which is a reading assessment, scores improve slightly. So Fountas and Pinnell is a reading assessment that our teachers do in person, have students read a text, and they discuss the text together. The language arts Exact Path scores follow the same trend. Track My Progress in ELA shows a slight improvement, though we still have more work to do to get back to where we were. And again, our goals were to be, were based on teacher perception. And now that we have a way of showing you actual testing data in a easier fashion, that will be how we report it in the future. We've had a few additional substantiated harassment cases this year. So this is our social emotional learning, mental health and well-being goal, that we will maintain the FY21 rate of behavioral incidents as reported through behavioral data and anecdotal reports. And that this slide shows that we've had a few additional substantiated harassment cases this year. In terms of suspension data, we have 47 suspension events in the fall, and we have only had 3 added suspension events since then, which indicates an overall improvement in the number of major behavioral incidents SU-wide. I don't think this should surprise the board. Our principals were reporting increased challenges with student behavior at the beginning of the school year. This slide shows our panorama social emotional student competency and well-being measure. So we gave the assessment in December, and we will be conducting that assessment again in April. In December, our students took the panorama assessment, which is conducted as a survey given to students in grades 3 through 12. Panorama then breaks the scores down into these 4 categories, which are supportive relationships, positive feelings, challenging feelings, and emotional regulation. The 2 colors indicate the 2 grade spans because we had a 3rd through 5th grade version of the assessment and then a 6th through 12th version of it's not an assessment, of the survey. In the spring, we will be adding the K2 teacher perception survey, which requires teachers to report out on certain things regarding their students. We're happy to report that our students feel that they have supportive relationships within our buildings. We feel that this is the foundation that will help which will help support skill development in other areas. Emotional regulation was the area on the rightmost side that students reported having the most challenge with. Right now, I will do my best to answer any questions. That was a lot. And of course, you can email me questions too.
Okay, thank you. There is someone unknown. If you could state your name. And they have put their hand back down. Thank you, Angie. My question.
Amy, are you going to?
Hi, Ian.
Go ahead, Amy. Go ahead, Amy.
I'm not hearing anything, so I don't know if anybody's out there.
Angie, can you hear now?
Maybe not.
Okay. So the question that I had while I was listening.
Okay, we shut that off. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. The question I had on that last screen, Angie answered with the emotional regulation, if that meant that 35% of 3rd through 5th grade, does that mean that they reported having more challenges and 42 of the 6 through 12? Or does that mean they reported not being challenged?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a second. That means that 35% answered favorably, meaning that they had that they reported positively on their ability to regulate their emotions, like not get angry if another child was angry, not be upset if there were other people in their space that was upset, that sort of thing. So that's all of these responses are based on favorable answers. So that's why when you look at supportive relationships, 87% of 3rd through 5th graders reported positive relationships, and 82% of 6th through 12th graders reported supportive relationships. And it's not just limited to school, because some of the questions ask them about any adults in their life as well as their friends.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
It looked like Megan Reed. but then her hand went back down.
I will send my question
Okay,
to
you're
Angela in
welcome.
another email. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions for Angie? Davis.
Yeah, and forgive me if this was on a previous slide, but sorry. Okay, it looks like this is from one snapshot of the survey. Is there any sort of visualization or information about the general trend in this data, maybe over the last couple of years, or from the last time it was taken at this time?
Davis,
Whoops, you want to try again, Angie? I think we might have
did you hear
muted you.
that? It's baseline.
Now we
data.
got you. Try it again.
So this is
Oh,
the
it's
first time that we've given the assessment. We'll have more data by the end of April.
Got it. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that,
question.
Angie.
Thanks. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to move to the ARP ESSER 3 plan. And is that Angie as well?
Amy, just a second. I think that Katie was going to just talk for a couple of minutes about the MTSS
Yes. Katie,
system, which
and
basically
I have
takes
more
this data-
slides
how we
about
take
the MTSS system.
Ah, okay, great.
And Angie, when you present, can you keep presenting as I slide into mine?
I'm really
That's okay.
struggling here with
Or can I
getting
help?
my sound right.
It sounds good now.
So Katie, I'm going to, can you hear me? Just give me a thumbs up.
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to point out that in our multi-tiered system of supports that we have various levels of support that start from the universal level or universal for all. That is the classroom that is available for all students. It's the classroom teacher and any staff working in that classroom. That includes best teaching practices, our basic curriculum, and instruction that meets the needs of all learners in the classroom. Universal screening tools help us identify students who, if they're making progress as expected. We use a universal screening tool in the classroom, that's Track My Progress. And then we make, as well as curriculum-based assessments like little quick quizzes you might do, quick assessments of students, just teachers looking at student work, et cetera, and then making adjustments to the instruction in the classroom. When students start to struggle or show, or perhaps they've missed a lesson, they're showing that they don't quite understand something. Level 2 is when we give students another opportunity to learn and practice the concepts and skills. This happens within the classroom, again, with any staff who are working within the classroom, and it includes extra practice, reteaching, also called double dosing, where a student would get a lesson, perhaps not in the same way that it was initially taught, so that perhaps we can hone in on their particular learning style. We want to, again, seek additional information to make sure that we're understanding where students are at. We can bring this information, we can bring students up, teachers they meet in teams and they discuss kids and Kid Talk. They consult with specialists, with their special educators, speech, occupational therapists, physical therapists, et cetera, if they have a particular concern. The next level after that is targeted intervention, and that's designed to close the gap from where students are currently to where we want them to be. That can happen within or outside of a classroom. It can be conducted by a variety of people, interventionists, the special educator, parents, classroom teachers. Parents are brought in at this step where I mean, in terms of really understanding the plan that a student would be on in terms of getting this intervention. When we start thinking about, is a student responding to instruction at level 3, then we start looking at what can we do more to support this student, and we may develop a student success plan, and that brings in the next level, which is looking for more. There's something that this student is not responding to instruction, and that we need to start bringing in the special educator. And this is where Katie is going to start talking about how at this point we have our classroom teachers have worked with the student and the parents to try to figure out what's working best for this child. And there is perhaps all these clues that the child is not responding to regular instruction and may need specialized instruction. So Katie, at this point, I'm going to mute and let you take over this.
Thank you, Angie. So as Angie said, a lot has been done up until this point, and you've heard the use of the word data over and over again, and that will inform the next steps. Between level 4A and level 4B, which there's a lovely chart that we have going that we have been refining over time, we would look to refer a child to what we're now calling a child find team. Children are not lost. They are children that we need to find out more information about. And this team sits with our school psychologist as the chair and other specialists, as well as the parent, classroom teacher, and they have a discussion about what do we already know and what do we want to find out to inform us on next steps. Sometimes that leads to an evaluation for special education. Sometimes it leads for a 504 plan, which is more about accommodations and modifications. Other times it leads us places we didn't think it was going to go. But that is a conversation that we've put in within our MTSS system. The assessments we use at this level are based on what students have already received, the data we have, and we're looking for gaps in that data. We're actually getting more refined on being very specific. And it's been wonderful as we develop an MTSS system to be able to use more and more of the authentic assessment that children are using and teachers have been using, and we see the results that way versus some of the standardized tests that we use, which are really only a snapshot in time versus the longitudinal data. So that's a shift we will be making. Who's doing this? We have a referral form, because without it, we have a wonderful paper trail. And we're continuing to refine not only the form, but our process. And this also dovetails exactly into what special education law says we have to do. And we've managed to find a way so it makes sense for our MTSS system. Good for the next one, Angie. An individual education plan, which many of you have heard as an IEP. In order for a student to be eligible for an individual education plan, they need specialized instruction that is not necessarily available to all students. And what we are going to find, and this is part of the byproduct of 173 and the new rule changes in the state of Vermont, which would take another 24 hours to explain. So the short version is we will be looking more at what our MTSS system is doing for students and the wide range of use of interventionists and strong classroom instruction in order, which is very different than 10 or 15 years ago. So the need for specialized instruction will become a very important conversation to have. And that includes special instruction from a special educator, a speech language pathologist, or other specialists. But it's not becoming, how do I put this, as specialized as it once was, because we have a lot of specialists before we even get to this point, which is pretty cool. The data collection, it's also part of the rule changes for the state of Vermont this year, within goals and objectives kept by special educators plus other professionals. There's a lot of accountability in this particular system when you reach this level. And I think the last slide is, nope, second to last slide. Ongoing assessments, which just is what we will use, special education assessments, as well as whatever assessments the general education classroom is using. So we don't exclude students, we include, and then they get some extras. Next one, Angie. So we do have a very small population of students that need something very different. We talked about this, I believe, at the last board meeting, at some point when we talked about students and our programming for the future for Windsor Southeast, looking at alternative programming within our community, as well as some students at certain points in their career do need something different that we don't have in our range of services, including therapeutic placements or other collaborative programming. Almost without exception, all of those decisions are made in tandem with community partners, such as our mental health, HCRS, sometimes DCF, Easter Seals, and several other, Mount Scottney. We frequently work with physicians. So those interagency teams are critical in those situations. And the focus is always on students getting what they need at that time, but also on reintegration into the community. So it's an interesting dynamic to plan for a student to go someplace and at the same time plan for them to come back. And I think that was the actual last slide, am I right, Angie? Rebecca?
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Angie. Katie, I just wanted to ask about the special education piece. You just commented that it's definitely transitioning into a different kind of a process. And it's been one way for so many years. That's probably how most parents understand it. And I'm just wondering if, one, you are in the process of, is that transitioning occurring? And if it is, have parents been notified of it? And two, do you plan on trying to, notify not only parents, but the community that there are these big changes going on that, as you said, so many of us are familiar with the way it was done 10, 15 years ago, but it's very different. It's changing.
That is a fantastic question, because we spent Friday in an all-day in-service with all of the special education staff. It was wonderful. And part of that was to roll out all of these changes. It's been quite a year trying to figure out from the AOE what's actually coming. Some of the things might be delayed, how the impact of 173, by the way, we're in the middle of a pandemic, trying to get all of these, understand all these pieces. So to answer your question, I'm developing with some of the special educators a way that we can explain this not only to the admin team, we just talked about it actually today, of being able to give the overview, then to all of the staff as well as parents. We just recently, as part of our focus on involving more parents, we're looking at developing a distribution list so we can invite parents to things like this. It's a pretty targeted list of families that are involved so that we can explain a lot of these rule changes in a way that we all understand them, as well as the impact of MTSS and how it all fits together. So it will be over next year. A lot is coming very quickly as of July 1 that changes some significant pieces in special education. And if they are not paused, there's two rule changes in particular that might be delayed till 2023. To my knowledge, as of today, it hasn't gone through the Senate Education Committee, if I remember correctly, and someone else might know that more readily than I do. But as of the end of last week, it hadn't. So we will be working with folks. We're still learning what those changes will look like and how this all fits together. So it'll be excited about it, more excited about it after Friday, less scared. in all honesty. And we'll have to bring folks along on this journey. It's pretty neat. So thank you for asking that. I'm glad I have a good answer for it too after we've made some plans.
Another question I had, because I know that in your focus on budget and hiring specific individuals and for specific, has some of your hiring sort of complements or sort of supports part of where is it that you're transitioning to?
Our advertisement and plan, yes. Our actual hiring is impacted right now by shortages. For example, we are fairly certain our mental health hires that we hope say yes. As we look at, we've had some options there where within the teaching realm, we have not had as many people. So the plan is there and we hope the hires come. So that is our reality right now. And that's statewide from hearing from other special education directors. That is our biggest challenge with MTSS for all, from classroom teachers, from interventionists to specialists. That is our struggle right now. It's not the plan, it's truly the staffing.
So Angie and Katie, was there going to be something more on Summer Academy? Or are we?
So not really. We have just sent the letters out to the initial wave, and we put it in. We decided it didn't really, at this point, warrant any separate slide. As part of our recovery plan and our MTSS system, it's very similar to last year's format, except it's 4 weeks instead of 5 because of where 4th of July fell this year. And we think it was a little over 210. Brittany was the one who had that number etched in her brain of students that were eligible in either literacy or math according to TMP scores. So letters have gone out. We've had very favorable response as well as a favorable response from staff interested in working. Good chunk returning from last year, plus some new folks. So it will also still be centralized at Windsor like it was last year as well. But I think I'll put a plug in that we are continuing to support students in any of the programs that happen afterwards, including Windsor Rec, Heartland Rec, getting them there, as well as the program Wethersfield is planning on running an enrichment STEAM program in the afternoons so that wherever students decide to go afterwards, we can get them there.
Great, thank you. Yep. And it's nice to hear that there are additional staff who's interested. I think there was a lot of positive feedback from last year that there wasn't drudgery that some people might think there would be, that there was more, learning is fun. And so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We look forward to hearing more.
Me too.
Are we now ready for ARP ESSER 3?
I hope so, and I hope you can hear me now because I figured out what was wrong with my headset. I sent the board the ARP ESSER plan, which is posted on the website, and I thought for the benefit of our community, I will walk you through the steps to find the plan. I'm not going to read through the plan with you. I think you can do that on your own. If anybody has any questions, you can reach out to me directly, but I also will show you where the comment form is. A requirement for ARP ESSER 3 funding is that we create an ARP and yet another plan that shows how we are spending the money and breaking down the money in certain areas, because 20% of the recovery funding has to go toward academic improvements for students. So academic supports for students. So I will just show you that. I'm going to share my screen. And we will start at wsesu.net. For the next few weeks, this banner at the top of the page is going to be directing you toward the ARP ESSER 3 plan found on the curriculum side of our website. So if you click there, that will bring you to this page, which tells you all about our ARP ESSER plan. And if you scroll down, if you also, at the top, you can see our recovery plan. Our ARP ESSER plan is designed to support the goals of our recovery plan. Our recovery plan is designed to support the goals of our strategic plan. And if you happen to be noticing school-wide plans, Windsor and Heartland both have school-wide plans, and we presented on the Windsor school-wide plan last week, and this week we will be presenting on the Heartland school-wide plan. And again, those are all informed by the strategic plan. So if you scroll down on this page, you'll see that our ARP ESSER plan is open for public commentary through April 15th. And you can either email me, or you can click the link to the comment form, which also lives. If you scroll down, you can see a copy of the plan, as well as the projected budget. For the next 2 years, ARP ESSER funds are for FY23 and FY24, and they must be expended by September 30th, 2024. So we have a little bit of extra time after 2 school years. So then I included the recording of the ARP ESSER, slideshow, and then the recording here that we did in February. And if you keep scrolling, be patient, the comment form is right there. So I just wanted to point that out to our community members, as we have received one comment, which was about the how the 20% for student, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the exact words. If you click here, click on the plan, it should open right up into a bigger window for you. I'm going to share that window. And there's some demographic information, some other links to other plans on there, and then other funding sources as best as we could capture that data. And then this is the part that the 20% reserved to address the academic impact of lost instructional time. The students that were particularly impacted by COVID, we designed our recovery plan to address the needs of those students. And that includes peer mentoring at the 912, our recovery coordinator. Much of this meeting and the data that has informed our process is because of our recovery coordinator. She's working very hard with our teams in the buildings to develop an MTSS system. Our teachers that we have hired, our transitional K teacher and paraprofessional, as well as 2 teachers in each of our Heartland, Wethersfield, and Windsor school, to decrease class size. Those are our major investments with the ARP ESSER funds to reduce the impact of the pandemic and lost instructional time for our particularly vulnerable students. And then Summer Academy is here. Again, I invite you to, I'm going to stop sharing this. I invite you to send your comments and take a look at the plan. That's all I have, Amy.
That was a wealth of information. Thank you, Angie.
Yes, a lot.
And that's great because thank you for walking us through on the website so that the community who is participating this evening can see where the information, they can find it directly. Thank you. Rebecca.
I wanted to thank you, Angie. I did have an opportunity to read through it, and I found it accessible, meaning that I think that you laid it out in a way that people can see expenditures and what they were for. So I think when the community does look it up, they will be able to understand it. So I wanted to thank you.
Thank you. There were a few changes since the February 9th presentation that we did, and the budget that was presented then has changed slightly. We added in staff mental health supports, some funding for that for this year and the next 2 years, as well as a few other things to improve our technology response, ability to respond and that sort of thing. So thank you, Rebecca.
Are there any other questions for Angie? Hearing none, we will move on to the next item on the agenda. Again, thank you, Angie. And that is the calendar and early release days. David, is that you or is that Angie as well? Or
I think that's me, right, Angie? We both are prepared to talk about it. It's really quick. Well, it could be quick. We could spend a lot of time on it. But as you know, this year, partly because of recovery efforts, partly because of all the work that you see that we're engaged in, that time for staff planning, staff professional development continues to be a real need. This year, we had one noon release day a month. The change that we're proposing to the supervisory union board, because a noon release is disruptive to, a family. You have to organize it, figure it out, but you know enough ahead. But essentially, the recommendation of the administrative team is that we go with one noon release day a quarter. So we'll reduce that by quite a few of those noon release days. But it is important. It is important work. And the other thing we'll do next year, you don't have to get into these weeds, but we felt that to always do them on Fridays, it always impacted the same classes, especially at the high school level, but even sometimes at the middle school level. So we'll probably look at that calendar and we'll spread those 4 noon release days, those quarterly noon release days out over different days of the week, one maybe on a Friday, one on a Tuesday. So whether you want to take a formal vote or not, that's up to you. If you just want to give us some sense of consensus, because we have not put those days in the calendar yet, and we'll want to do that. We've published the calendar, but not with. The sooner parents can know when those release days are, and this is early still, the better off they can plan.
Are there any board comments? Rebecca.
I only had one, but I think it was answered last time when we talked about the calendar shored up with Hartford Technical Center to make sure that our students were able to get there at the same time. I think, Bill, you took care of that.
Yeah, that was a concern, a year ago too. But no, we've matched those up now with the calendar. So
thank you.
Good. The vacations, mostly the vacations, that's what's critical. The start of the year is always off by a couple of days, but we work that out because we provide transportation for those tech center kids. But all vacations match, all holidays match. So it should work out.
Thank you. So David, do you have an idea if you would have those early release dates by our next meeting?
Yeah, we can have it as long as I've got some, and I'm taking the silence as some level of consensus that dropping from monthly to quarterly is okay. And what I'll do is I'll just I'll work with the team. We'll put together that final calendar and we can bring it back to you at the next meeting.
Okay, that would be great. Are there any board members who are concerned about going to that 4-day early release schedule? And it does not sound that way. So thank you, David. We will look forward to getting that information at our next meeting.
Yeah, I'll send, and I can even send it out to all of you ahead of time, obviously.
Sure. Great. Thank you. That was quick. And we are moving on to our policies. The first policy is C14, policy on section 504 and ADA grievance protocol for students and staff. And that is our first reading. And usually with a first reading, it's just discussing if there are questions or concerns on that policy, and then it goes to the next meeting for a second reading. Are there any questions, concerns on that policy? Bill?
Is there any way we can get it cleaned up, with get the actual information in it?
Yeah, that would happen at the next reading, Bill.
Okay, thank you, David.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Any other questions regarding? Okay, so we will move that to our April meeting for a second reading. Next is a review of pupil privacy rights. And let me see. Were there any questions or concerns? So that was, the revision was adopted in 2019. Davis.
So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding what this document is saying correctly. It looks like for each of these eight items, there should be a corresponding policy to those areas, correct?
You mean a corresponding procedure? To those.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
right.
Corresponding procedure. Right.
That's correct. That would show up either in our handbooks or, yeah. And the revisions were pretty slight on this from 2019. Okay. But you're right, and you'll find those things spread out, those parental rights pieces spread out through other documents and procedures in the district.
Yeah. Thanks.
Just out of curiosity and for our public who is participating, would it be possible at our next meeting, not so much to have a conversation on the administrative procedures, but to have something pinpointing, so someone who wanted to see those procedures doesn't have to go digging in the website?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, Amy, because right now, if you went digging for procedures on the website, you wouldn't find them. Most of those procedures, like I said, are spelled out in handbooks. But the Vermont School Boards Association, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but we've aligned our policies pretty much with their model policies. We've made some changes, obviously, based on our discussions, but they just published model procedures that align with those. So we're reviewing those now, and I think probably, if not the next meeting, the meeting afterwards, we can and again, boards don't have to adopt procedures, but it would be good for you to have the FYI around those procedures. So that's a very timely question, and we'll make sure that that happens.
That would be helpful, because I'm sure that any community member who is looking at this policy is wondering the same thing that Davis asked
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
Where
Yeah.
are the procedures, and
Yeah.
and who gets a handbook, that kind of thing. So
Exactly.
yeah. Davis, you had another question or comment?
Yeah, and Amy, you sort of steered me in that direction. I think you might have read my mind a little bit, but would it be possible to even go a step further and draft some sort of companion document that could provide those cross references? Because I do know, it's nice to be able to tie what all of these 8 items are to where they live, if folks are interested in seeing them.
Yeah, I think it would be possible, Davis, and I think that that's pretty much what that procedures document does. And then we could put those also on the website, so you'd be able to cross. You go to this policy, it would link you right to those procedures, and yeah, I think there's a way to do that.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you.
It's just going to take us a little bit of time to pull all that together.
Sure.
Great, thank you. Were there any other questions on people privacy? If not, we can revisit that at our April meeting as well, just to see where we are on the procedure thing. And moving on to A21, public participation at board meetings. And we've been working on this one for a few months now. And I know I have it here in my stack of stuff. So our first reading for this policy, and there was a significant amount of discussion, if I remember correctly, was in January. So are there any other questions or comments on public participation at board meetings? Hearing none, I will take a motion to adopt the policy. Anne Marie?
Yeah, sorry, I was just tucking the kids in, and I did have a comment on the public policy. It was, where is it? If a participant exceeds the allotted time, they submit their full or remaining comments to the board in writing. I just thought that sentence needs to be reworded just a little bit. Like maybe if it said, if a participant's comments exceed the allotted time, they may submit their full or remaining comments.
Where is that?
Under number 3, there's 3, and then underneath number 3, it's number 2.
I agree with you that the way you stated, rephrasing makes a lot more sense. It reads much more easily.
So Anne, do you want to repeat one more time how you think it sounds better to you?
Sure. If a participant's comments exceed the allotted time, they may submit, and then the rest the same.
Okay, got it.
I agree. That's a good change.
Yeah.
Did anyone else have Davis?
So looking at and under that same section 3.5, the board will not comment on public participation, and then what comes after that. I guess I just wanted to be clear. I know that to me, this section and a couple other points here seem to indicate that we would be sort of sequestering the public comment time from board discussion. And I just want to clarify if that's the intention of that particular note, because it doesn't seem to reflect how we've done things. So I just want to maybe poke at that a little bit.
This is referring to the part in the agenda, public participation at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, specifically.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So if, for instance, when we were talking about the equity with Mary Gannon, we
Sure.
took public comment and we responded,
Mhm.
you know, as far as clarification, et cetera.
Yep.
But if new points of information or questions come up, we won't be responding to that. You know, we would say, thank you, we have to look into that. It will be on the next agenda or something to that effect.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that clarification. I just wanted to be sure, because I think that it's really beneficial on those agenda items to be able to engage in some discourse with the public it comes, and just want to make sure that that wasn't necessarily saying that, or that we weren't adopting a policy that we were then flagrantly like not following. So, but that makes sense.
No, and even for instance, with when we had the public discussion on masking, we were listening, not necessarily engaging, because we did and we do want to hear how our community is feeling about a particular topic. But we won't always be engaging in a back and forth conversation.
Got it. Appreciate it.
There probably will be times on particular topics that we will hold a community forum, and then we will be having an engaged conversation on particular topics. So where there will be back and forth conversation. So, but that's the difference. This is a business meeting. That is a community forum. Nancy.
I move that we accept this policy.
Second.
Mark, were you raising your hand to second?
I was.
Okay, well.
Davis beat me to it.
Thank you. So I am going to do a roll call. If I can find my.
Do we edit this, Nikki? Do we edit that to include Anne Marie's comment, Anne Marie's sentence?
Yeah.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, that is what you meant, Nancy.
Yes.
Correct.
okay, good.
Okay. Thank you, Nikki.
Who seconded, Amy?
Mark. Oh,
no, Davis.
All right, we're going to give it to Davis. Got it.
Okay, going down our list of board members. How do you, or is there any further discussion? I'm sorry. I will now take a roll call. Anne Marie.
Aye.
Beth Roy.
Aye.
Bill Yates.
Aye.
Colleen Spence.
Aye.
Davis McGraw,
Aye.
Elizabeth Burrows,
Aye.
That's like that. She's standing right next to Mount Scottney, and the echo
yeah.
keeps coming back. I like that.
Jamie Turner,
Aye.
Mark Youngling,
Aye.
Nancy Pedrick,
Aye.
Nicole Buck,
Aye.
Rebecca Roisman,
Aye.
and have I got everyone with the exception of myself? I vote aye, so it is unanimous. Thank you very much. And we have adopted our public participation policy. Thank you very much. And thank you, Elizabeth, and a few others for all of the work that you did to put this policy together and to help us work through so that we can best hear the thoughts and concerns of our community as well, and at the same time have a business meeting that unfortunately this one might last until 10, but not all meetings will be lasting until 10. So thank you. Moving on. Hold on, sorry.
Yeah, you had mentioned, Amy, I put it on my copy of my agenda, but you were just going to explain the conflict complaint and
Oh, yes, thank you. I was just looking for my agenda that I have here. So yes, item F in the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union received a complaint of a conflict of interest by community member Daniel Wartz, and it was regarding Mount Scottney School Board member Elizabeth Burrows. And according to our conflict of interest policy, the procedures for this, when we receive a written complaint, is that it will go to the board, who will then vote as to whether or not they will have an informal hearing. And because Elizabeth is on the Mount Scottney School District Board, actually, let me go back. I'm sorry. Everyone who sits on the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union Board does so as a function of their elected position on their local school district board. So when there is a conflict of interest, it will then go back. It will be heard at the local school district board, because that is the community that elected and placed that person on the board and who that person is representing on the board. So at our next Mount Scottney School District meeting, we will vote to entertain whether or not we will have an informal hearing. That will happen. Of course, Elizabeth will not be part of that vote. I, as the vice chair of the Mount Scottney School District, will conduct that voting. And if we determine to have an informal hearing, that will happen at the following meeting. However, because our communities, our districts all work together as a supervisory union, and I believe we have a very good working relationship across our district. We will keep all of you informed on how, on the outcome, on the progress of the complaint that Mr. Wertz has brought against Elizabeth Burrows. Are there any questions on that? Hearing none, we move on, yay, to items for action. The first item for action, at our last meeting, Elizabeth Burrows was nominated and voted as the vice chair, and she has declined. So I will take a motion. I'll take nominations. And Nancy Pedrick, you have raised your hand.
Yes, I nominate Bill Yates.
And Rebecca.
I second.
And Mr. Yates, I believe you are here. Unlike Elizabeth, you have the opportunity to accept or decline the nomination.
I accept it.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Let me see. I will do our roll call once again. Beginning with Anne Marie.
Aye.
Beth, Roy,
Aye.
Bill Yates,
Aye.
and oh my gosh, Colleen Spence,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Elizabeth,
Aye.
Jamie Turner,
Aye.
and oh my gosh, Mark,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Nicole,
Aye.
Rebecca,
Aye.
and I, Amy, am an I. So congratulations, Bill. You are the vice chair of the Windsor Southeast Supervisory Union Board. And thank you, Elizabeth, for your brief time as the vice chair. That's what happens when you do not attend a meeting. You get voted into office. But that's not fair because Elizabeth was not feeling well. So thank you, Elizabeth, for serving all that you do. Thanks. Next on the items for action is the ESP contract ratification. Is that the support staff?
Right, all the boards, you're right, the support stuff, all the boards, we couldn't find, there's a part of me that thinks we did do this, but we couldn't find it anywhere in the minutes. So we want to get it documented, just so we've got it there. I mean, we went over, because I remember going over the changes, all the individual boards have gone over the changes, which is why I don't think we need to do that tonight. But if somebody wanted to make a motion to ratify the support staff, we would get that into the record.
I'll move that we ratify the support staff contract.
I'll second.
Okay, so that was Nikki and Mark Youngling with the second. Are there any other comments or questions? I will go through our roll call again. Anne Marie?
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
Elizabeth?
Aye.
Jamie?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Nikki,
Aye.
Rebecca,
Aye.
and I, Amy, am an aye. It is unanimous. Thank you, everyone. And David, the 403B for at-will employees. Can you
Right.
explain that?
Yes, I will. And we don't have to necessarily vote on this tonight, but but we did negotiate for both the support staff, and Bill certainly was a big part of that, and for the teachers, a 403B contribution. We never really talked about at-will employees, which would be anything from a building principal to, business manager, and currently, right, there's nothing in their contracts that allows for that 403. My recommendation would be that we do allow that, and we allow it at the same rates as we designated for teachers. But I'm certainly open for feedback, and we can actually, if you want to wait, push it to the next meeting if we needed to. But
Bill, you have a comment.
I'm in favor of it. And, we deal with equity in many different levels. And it was really important to me going into the support staff that negotiation that they had the same opportunity for this as teaching staff. And I think an at-will employee should have that same level of opportunity.
Mark,
I'm going to completely agree with Bill on this. It seems like we've been talking about this for 2 years. It's an equity issue. I think everybody should be on the same page if we're working as an SU.
thank you. Are there any other comments? Would
So-
someone like to make a motion?
I was going to say, if you make a motion, and I would be specific, Bill, just because you had so much, input into this. I mean, if you wanted to make the motion, you could, but I would just make sure the language is in there that it parallels the teacher 403B contribution language. That's all.
Yes. So I'll make a motion that at-will employees have the access to the same 403B contribution as teaching staff.
Would that include the same caps?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Nancy, did you second?
Yes.
Okay. David, do you have it?
I do. Got it.
Okay. Our fine and dandy roll call one more time. Anne Marie?
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
Elizabeth? We'll come back to her if we need to. Jamie?
She's dialing in.
And Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Nikki?
Aye.
Rebecca?
Aye.
And let's see if Elizabeth is available.
Aye.
Well
Wonderful,
done.
thank you. And I, Amy, am an aye. So it is unanimous. Our at-will employees will have the same access to 403B as our teaching staff. So thank you very much. And we are at our favorite part where we set up our next agenda. Yay!
Actually, Amy, I wish we were, but we've got one more thing we've got to do, because you had mentioned at the beginning about, or somebody did, about appointing that third budget committee member.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, that can be quick.
And that's quick.
So,
And
what community?
Heartland.
Heartland.
Heartland did not get mentioned.
Right.
And I'm going to beg Colleen to do it again, but that's up to Colleen.
Yes, I'll do that.
Thank you, Colleen.
Excellent. Thank you, Colleen.
Unless anybody else wants to.
I don't think anyone is going to push you out of the way.
It's good. I like doing it.
Great. Thank you. We are now setting the next agenda. So I think we will probably have, oh, do you know what we never did? Because I think Elizabeth, you had some comments or something on the approval of the minutes. We did not, that's an open motion. Elizabeth.
I'm terribly sorry for all of this gobbledygook, but I was wondering okay, it's a little bit complicated now, but I was trying to signal that I would appreciate it if the two sets of minutes could be separated, because I was only there for one of the meetings and I can't vote on that set of minutes. So I would have to not vote on both, which is fine. But I am comfortable voting on the first set of minutes. But there's already been a motion and a second. So that was my original comment.
Okay. I do not recall who made that. Was it Nancy?
I think it was Nancy, correct?
Yeah, it was. I just removed that motion and I move that we accept, what's the date? The 3/14? Is that the first one?
No, the first one was February 23rd.
I move that we accept the February 23rd minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Davis?
Correct.
Yeah, it was me.
Okay, so Nancy and Davis, and so it's not, I still have to go through the roll call. Okay. Were there any clarifications or corrections?
I think we were good.
Hearing none. Anne Marie.
Aye.
Beth.
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't there.
Okay, thank you. Bill.
Aye.
Colleen.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Elizabeth.
Aye.
Jamie.
I'm going to abstain. I wasn't there.
Okay, thank you. And Mark.
Aye.
Nancy.
Aye.
I think you called my name, Nikki. Aye.
What?
Did you call my name?
I did.
Somebody sees me or something. I think it's David recovering from COVID.
You can hear that, huh? Thanks.
Yes. Rebecca.
Aye.
And I, Amy, am an aye. So those minutes were passed unanimously. Next, I will take a motion to approve the minutes for March 14th?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that was Mark and Nicole. Are there any comments or questions? Clarifications needed? So
Elizabeth has her hand up, I think.
I think that was a legacy hand. Thank you, Anne. So I will begin the roll call. Anne Marie?
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
Elizabeth? Abstain?
I abstain.
Okay, thank you. Jamie?
I abstain.
Mark?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Nikki?
Aye.
And Rebecca?
Aye.
And I, Amy, am an aye. So thank you very much. With 2 abstentions, our minutes from previous meetings have been approved. Now we get to set the next agenda for real. I think we still have equity work. Bill?
I just have a quick topic, kind of related to what we voted on earlier about admin contracts. I just want to have a quick discussion about doing some research on admin salaries at in our district compared to other districts.
Okay. So admin salaries. And the Vermont School Board Association has a recommended policy on transgender and gender nonconforming students. That, like I said, it's a recommended policy, so I suggest that we have it for a first reading at our next meeting. And David, I'll get that to you.
Yeah, just send it to Lori and I, and then what's the title of it?
It is transgender and gender non-conforming students.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. Did I say equity work?
No, but we should probably at least get the dates square, and maybe we can do that another way, but yeah. So we'll just put down, yeah, I think that's good. The equity update basically is good. Got it.
Okay. And are there other?
The calendar?
The calendar, thank you. And any ESSER and Summer Academy updates.
Yeah, by that time we should have a pretty good read on Summer Academy, so that would be good.
And I think that will be a full meeting.
Oh yeah.
And David, you wanted me to have a report for that?
Oh yeah, sorry, that's right, and that's part of what did we title that report, Larry? That's finance
and operations report.
Yeah, finance and operations. So we'll put all those together, ESSER and finance and operations. Okay, got it.
Excellent. And that meeting is scheduled for April April 25th. Monday, April 25th at 6:30. And it will be a hybrid meeting, meaning that there will be some of us in person at that meeting. Elizabeth, your hand is raised.
Thank you, Amy. I wondered whether the calendar will be set at the next meeting or whether we could have a discussion about a couple of facets of setting the calendar.
You talking about the calendar for next school year?
Yep.
Yeah, actually, you already voted to approve the calendar and it's already been sent out to parents. So yeah, this will just be those release days.
Okay. Okay. Do you think there could be a time when we could talk about the calendar before it's set without our input?
Yeah, sure. I mean, usually I send it out ahead of time and we try to have a discussion about it. But if you've got ideas or there are thoughts and we want to just have a general calendar discussion, for subsequent years, that would be fine.
I think it might. I'd like to talk about holidays, and so not a huge long discussion topic, really. I mean, realistically, but
Well, to tie into that, Elizabeth, can I just jump in, Amy, real quick?
Certainly.
Okay, just quickly, it's probably good to keep the optics open on this because the Hartford School District is full boat going into a full discussion about that, Elizabeth. And it really is important to many of the board members and many of the students how closely we follow Hartford. I think that's a great idea, Elizabeth, but also to keep the ear to the road about what they're doing as well.
Yep. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And as we have already approved the calendar for next year, it's not a pressing matter, but I just don't want it to fall off the radar.
No, and I think that I agree with Bill. I think that would be a good, we could do it at that, since we've got calendar on the agenda, we could kind of get these ideas flowing and thoughts about holidays and other things.
I also wondered, Amy, whether we could put on our agenda for next time just a very brief update on discussions with surrounding supervisory unions and where the state education committees in both the House and the Senate seem to be headed on SU consolidation.
Certainly, as long as it's brief and we don't.
Yeah, it'll be like a 2-minute long update. It won't be a long update.
It's just, it has to be an update and not this is what we should do. Otherwise.
No, I agree.
That would be
I totally agree.
One meeting all on its own.
Yep.
Or
Yep.
25 meetings on their own.
No, just simply an update.
Okay.
Simply an update.
Okay.
Yeah, I put it on there so that we've got it.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah, no, it'll be like a 2-minute long update.
Yep.
One way.
That'd be great.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Nicole.
I was just thinking with it moving into the April meeting that I feel like I haven't seen all of you guys in a really long time and that we need a retreat. And I was also thinking that Mary's work and a retreat kind of seem to fit well together. And so I was wondering if we might talk about a retreat date or throw some things out there, just get it going. And Craig too, because we like Craig.
So put that on the agenda is what you're saying, Nikki, right? To have a retreat discussion.
Yeah, I don't want a long one, but I feel like we should try and find some dates.
Okay. Yes, I think you're right. So thank you. And let me see, I see Beth, you have your hand raised.
Yep, simple question, just with going to hybrid meetings, is the expectation that board members are in person?
You can be in person or at your home because it is hybrid.
Yeah,
You'll be
the only,
there.
Amy, am I correct that the only requirement is that at least one board member is present?
Correct.
In person, right.
Yeah. And just, I recommend, so that the one board member isn't all on their own, that at least two people.
Yeah.
It's just been my experience with hybrid is that it works a lot better if everyone's in one place or the other in that when it comes to board discussions and things like that. So just trying to make sure we're not all spread out everywhere.
So when we were hybrid, before we went to, because there was a brief period of time that we were hybrid, and we used the OWL at the supervisory union office. And I don't know about you, but I was there in person for a couple of meetings, and I was at home, and I felt that it all worked rather well. Both when I was there.
I agree. I agree. It did work well, and I think it's fine if we're home or there. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think it's how we're comfortable. So,
Amy, I think
ideally, I would love for all of us to be in the same room together.
Yeah.
But again, it's what each one feels comfortable with.
Well, I think what we've learned about hybrid meetings is it does allow certain members of the public, who don't have good access to transportation if they want to come into a meeting. And we've gotten pretty good at it. As you can see tonight, we had some glitches, but I think to have that hybrid option, if most of the board members could be there in person, I think that's great. What I'm really concerned about is location, because we were meeting at the SU office, which was convenient for the board. We didn't get much public. We've been getting a lot of public, but if we got a lot of public, the SU office would not work really well. So I know there was a time when we moved the SU meetings around, and so I don't know whether we want to start in our central district at Windsor and use room 210 like we used to. I don't know, Larry, whether that would mean moving the OWL or whether we have an OWL at Windsor, but I would recommend a larger room just in case. I don't think we'll get 60, 80 people but I think there'll probably be, there could be 8 to 10 that, that want to show up in person. And that would require a different room than that office. Is 210 at Windsor okay with everybody? Okay, and Larry, you and I can talk about the technology there. We'll figure that out.
Great,
all right.
Thank you. So we have a very full agenda for our April meeting. And at this point in time, we can plan on it being hybrid, and the physical location at Windsor, the high school side, room 210.
Got it.
Are we in any need for executive session?
No, we are not. Not for me.
Thank you. I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, so Rebecca, and was that Beth? Okay, excellent. I want to thank everyone for the robust conversation that we had. I think it was particularly the equity conversation. And I want to thank the public who participated and who provided comment as well. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening and a wonderful rest of the month of March. Have a great night.
Everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.